I lose money by coming to meetings and consulting and doing all these things. I don't do it for money. I'm not interested really being a CMO. Rather, you want to be a founder and you want to have the ability to ultimately change the course of that company.
I have a hard time at this phase of my career in being distracted by the mainstream consulting, because I feel that if I'm going to use 1 hour of my week in a project, I want it to be on my own damn company.
Even the crappiest technology can get sold. It's the team that matters more than the technology itself.
As you can see, we're in a ghetto room, how we always do everything.
Two vascular surgeons walk into a bar and come out with a podcast. We are talking everything vascular and not. Welcome to the Life of Flow podcast.
The following podcast is not relating to my teachings and work at Del Cedar Medical Center and is for entertainment purposes only.
All right, folks, here again with our AMP series. The good folks at HMP were kind enough to allow us to bring all our junk. As you can see, we're in a ghetto-ass room, how we always do everything. But along the lines of entrepreneurship, there's a thing called MVP, which means minimal viable product. And anytime you're out there thinking of an idea, you go MVP, you MVP it. And this is our version of it. So we look like idiots hauling a bunch of suitcases and putting all this together.
Yeah.
But you know what? Here's where we are. And this is now up to about 90 or something episodes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, hey, our MVP is maybe going into not so minimum viable
V1.
product. V1, is that what you would
I think
call
we're
it?
a V1.
Okay.
I would say.
Anyway, and so, along the series of advances in clinical care and advances in technology and innovation and development and entrepreneurship, I mean, it's an absolute pleasure to have Jay here talking to us. Jay Mathews, it's awesome, man. It's always been so fun to share the podium with you. I've got to known you at a personal level, at a professional level, at a scientific level. And it's always a great conversation. So thanks for your time and being here for us.
No, I appreciate being here. It's awesome.
One of the things that we like to do when we have when we're popping cherries here on a first show.
Oh my God. Let's go.
Hopefully one for the books. And I have no doubt that we will have you a multitude of more times talking about different things.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is understanding paths. I think that the people that we have a huge young following, people that I think are in residency or in training, and they always want to hear a little more personal side, maybe something we don't get to see on the podium, maybe something that doesn't have to do with a white paper. And it's that personal side of you. So let's pedal all the way back. I mean, how did even medicine become a thing? And let's start from that very inception of the idea that healthcare was your thing.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. Right. So, it was drilled into me from a very young age. My dad was a doctor and also had done many different things, had a very storied career. I mean, he graduated from med school in Canada in the 50s. And so, but he was a Renaissance man and studied a lot of different fields and worked in a lot of different spaces. Always from a young age, he kind of wanted me to go into medicine. But I did everything to not go into medicine.
So were you born in Canada?
No, I was born in the U.S. I was born in the Northeast of Connecticut and then raised in the Northeast. And so I would say I'm kind of from Massachusetts, kind of more of a Bostonian type guy. But I spent a lot of time in Canada and also other places as well. But, it was all part of formative experience. And, it was an interesting time because I graduated from high school in the early 90s. And then when I went to college, I went to an engineering school. So I was very scientifically interested, but I was also interested in the arts and all these other things. I was, was also a Renaissance man. So, I mean, I was a fine artist. I painted, I sculpted, I did all sorts of different things. And when I went to college, it was like I was a kid in a candy store. I actually finished my science degree in a year and a half. So I did essentially 4 years of college in a year and a half. And then I'm like, now what am I going to do?
How did you
do that?
Walk me through that.
39 credits a semester. They no longer allow people to do this.
Was there Red Bull back there? Like, what were you doing? Like, did you not sleep?
Yeah, I never slept. And people know me now that they know I still don't sleep. I mean, I'm literally just going 24 hours a day. My mind never stops, but I was doing literally everything I can. And everything I could. And when I was in college, I was suddenly in this environment where I was exposed to so many different things. So I actually went off because after I was done, like, well, what am I going to do now? I don't want to be a doctor. I'm like, there's so many other things that are interesting out there too. Like, why am I going down this path? I'm in an engineering program. I mean, there's all sorts of cool stuff happening. And so at the time, the internet was just taking off. Really, we went from dial-up to high-speed internet, and the World Wide Web was taking off. So I actually went off and got an art degree. So I have an electronic media arts and communication degree. So I started working as a media designer, and we founded a startup. So I was a vice president of a software startup, and it was nascent, and it was an awesome time, super formative. And I worked on software design, interface design. So that kind of was my background. And interestingly enough, both good and bad, I saw the dot-com bust happening. It was impending, and I knew what was about to occur. The whole thing was going to just blow up and implode. And so,
Wait, how did you know it was going to?
well, because I started recognizing that people could do what we did internally and our services were going to become redundant. And there's also a lot of overvaluing going on as well, too. So at some point I was like, you know what, maybe I should listen to my parents and go to medical school. So I can't say it was the best reason to go and become a doctor, but I was like, well, I'm getting kind of burned out by this grind that we're doing here too, going out, and it was more of a service-based technology. We were on the cusp of something really exciting, but it never really took off. And so I'm like, all right, I need to go do something different. And so I went to I got into medical school based off of like the stuff that I had done years earlier, not on the stuff that I'd done later on. And it was interesting. So I went to med school. I went to med school not with the idea that, hey, I'm going to do this to become a doctor. I was like, well, what else could I do? So I actually, while I was in med school, also got another graduate degree in health communication and focused on telemedicine and education, interactive education. And so I was doing consulting early on, kind of taking my entrepreneurial pursuits from the past and kind of continuing to apply it in medicine. So, worked with Harvard Business School, did a lot of consulting for a lot of software startups as well too. And that really informed my med school experience much more so than just the actual medicine stuff. I was like that med student that was like, yeah, this is interesting stuff, but I'm really more interested in all this other stuff that's out there.
Were you in a way thinking that medicine is going to just complement your entrepreneurship side or
Absolutely.
your entrepreneur self?
Yeah.
Not
It was
that
a tool.
it wasn't going to be a goal.
Yes.
It was a tool for another spiritual career. in a way.
100%. And in my mind, because I was always interested in all these other things, I was like, well, can medicine open doors to other things? So
Now today, in retrospect, is it still a tool?
no, it's complementary. So
Okay.
it's different. So I discovered my love of clinical medicine, though, when I finally went
Later
to
on.
residency. Yeah. So what's interesting is that,
Interesting.
there's a number of people that I was not in the MBA program. I went to Tufts for medical school, and there are a number of the MBA folks never actually went off to clinical practice. They just left from medical school, went to Wall Street. And I was like, well, that's a big waste in my mind. I was like, well, society has allowed me to do this. I need to be able to give back. So I continued on to residency. And when I went to WashU for residency, then I really kind of discovered my love of clinical medicine and whatnot too. And it was interesting. It was during that time that I met my mentor, Jazz Singh. He was an interventional cardiologist there too, who was also kind of a vascular guru as well too at the time, and really opened up my relationships to hardware and device companies. And so started doing some initial work with Volcano back in the day, and we did a lot of device development, and that was a whole new experience for me. So even though I kind of came from this engineering background, I was focused mostly on software, but not really on hardware. And I was a designer, so I liked my background, especially when I was in grad school, was focusing on how people interact with technology. So then now I was able to take it to how do physicians interact with technology. And so I was really interested on device development and really how do people use these tools that we're creating? How can we make it more efficient for physicians to deliver care? And that was really my focus. And it's actually continued to be my focus today.
Interesting.
So what happens next? So you get into radiology? No, you get into medicine.
Medicine. Yeah, medicine. I honestly, I was like very quickly gravitated towards cardiology because it was a very technologically oriented field. A lot of these other things, there's a lot of intellectual curiosity and I don't want to use the word mental masturbation, but sometimes I like, I did like the more technical aspects of it. So, I mean, I actually, interesting enough, was also training at Mallinckrodt as well too, radiology. So, WashU is interesting because there's a lot of cross-pollination between surgery, cardiology, and radiology. And actually, when I stayed on for fellowship there, both for general fellowship, advanced cardiac imaging, which was a very technologically oriented, and then ultimately a couple years of interventional as well too. And I was in a vascular lab. I was doing basic science work as well too, but in imaging, and then vascular biology, and lots of other interesting things too, involving imaging technologies with Mallinckrodt as well. And it was a super exciting time because this is just like really whole new fields that were being opened up, and I loved every second of it.
So you said you fell in love with clinical care. Do you remember when that happened? Was there an aha moment? Was it just a complementary thing, or was there maybe a story you can share about when you're like, man, there's this unbelievable love and passion that comes with helping and fixing and healing? Tell me a little bit about.
Well, I mean, I think
Let's-
it was like, I mean, even as an intern, it was a very hands-on program where they kind of let you cut loose and just do stuff. I mean, I don't know if it's like that now, because I feel like there's a lot more hand-holding that happens too. I mean, I predate work hours and whatnot too, and all these other things. And I think that it's one of those situations where sometimes when we didn't have all those rules, we're able to do so many more things. I think that just learning through doing, and having senior folks teach you how to do things, I mean, that's very important to the growth process. So I think that yeah, it was really early on. I mean, there's so many stories of just like random things, both good and bad, like really formative moments that we had. I mean, like you learn just as much from the saves as you do from the complications and the horrendous things that occur. That just really informs you. You see both.
I think I actually
good
think
and
you
bad.
learn more from the bad.
100%. And we all talk about, we all have that graveyard out there too, and we
I've
learn
got
from
my
that.
closet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you still think about that stuff all the time.
This is mine. Starbucks coffee, proud sponsor
Yeah.
of the Life of Flow. Did you continue your entrepreneur career during this formative time?
Yeah.
Or was there a pause? Did you build any companies in intern or residency level?
No, so I decided to take a step back when I was a resident to just learn, because I realized I knew very little. So what I thought I knew,
You knew very little about.
I knew very little about running a company. And what I realized very quickly was that I thought I knew how to run a company, because I owned a company. I mean, I was the vice president of a company, but I realized when I actually got into the device world, how little I knew and how many more issues there were too. There's a big
Through your
difference.
mentorship
Yes,
part, when
absolutely.
you were doing this whole volcano, you're like, wow, I was
Yeah.
potentially doing this ass backwards.
Well, it's not just that though, too. Like, there's so many other factors that come into play too when it comes to manufacturing, distribution, just even development too, and also regulatory stuff, right? So, I mean, software was so easy in comparison, because like you could sit in your closet and do something, and then here you have all these other issues that come into play too that impact whether you can create the greatest device in the world, but it may never make it to the market if you don't have all these other issues, planned out, and you prepare for that. So I just took a step back, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn as much as I can. And Volcano was just the first of many companies that I started doing consulting work with, and just started learning. And I didn't start getting involved at a very nitty-gritty level with startups until post fellowship, because I was there to learn, and during fellowship I just wanted to learn as much as I could about the technology, and performing procedures, and learning how to take care of patients properly. But at the same time, meeting a lot of these titans of industry as well too. I mean, I've known so many of these folks now for over quarter century, 25, 30 years. That some of these people that I've had the pleasure of meeting and knowing, and they've been very instrumental, I think, in growth, and seeing how these folks who started off as low-level folks in industry, and now are the presidents and CEOs of various companies. It's pretty exciting. Many of these folks were just engineers, and then now they're running their own companies. It's pretty exciting.
So what was your first opportunity with startups after fellowship?
Yeah. So after fellowship, it's interesting. I was offered to stay on as faculty at WashU, but it was an interesting time. So Jazz, who was my mentor, I was the last vascular interventional fellow that he trained, and after that, he stopped doing it. His back kind of was it was a hard time, and plus it was all some politics as well too. And they were going to try to keep me on as a vascular interventionalist there too, but vascular surgery was pretty dominant there too, so it was going to be very challenging. I'm good friends with all the folks now, but it's much more friendly when I'm outside of the institution than if I was actually in the institution itself too. But it was the best advice I ever got from Jazz and actually Howard Kurz, who were there. They told me to leave. And I left academic medicine, went to private practice, and the first job I took, I just literally just did CLI procedures for a year, and ended up leaving that job to go to the place I'm at right now too, which is at Brigham Cardiology, and so it was very early on. That first year when I got out into practice, it was just a whirlwind, right? You don't have anybody watching over your shoulder. I was just trying to, keep my head above water. I wasn't even really focused on the industry stuff, but I was making those connections, and people saw what I was doing. And then I'd always been very friendly to industry, so they had started approaching me about stuff, trying new things. And when I came to my second job, really literally a year after being in practice, that's when I think things started taking off. I started working with early days Cordis.
Okay.
And even before Cordis, there's like a lot of those startups. Like one of the first companies that we helped get sold was the Flex Stent. I don't know if you remember that, flexible stenting solution. So the Flex Stent, we sold that to Cordis. It was like a company with like 5 people back in the day. And
Was that what eventually was the Smart Flex?
yes,
Oh, yeah.
exactly. That was yeah. And I still think it's a good stent, but I haven't done much development with it too. So it's sitting in Cordis's bag to kind of resurrect. But that was one of the first projects that I worked on. And then another company that I worked on with really early on was Reflow. And Reflow Medical, I mean, we started off with just little micro catheters and the Wingman. But here we are now too. I'm the co-global PI of their RCT for the Spur drug trial. So that's one of my longest relationships that I've had, and also Philips as well too. So Philips, I was doing a lot of stuff with, but back in the day was Spectranetics. So Spectranetics and Volcano. Angel Score, so they're all separated. And then I was working with all 3 of those companies. They all got merged into one, and so that became Philips and Philips IGT. And I've had a really long-term relationship with those guys as well too. Dating back, now almost 20 years. So it's been really exciting to see where kind of all these technologies have gone.
So you've been developing that relationship side throughout the years, and focusing on your private practice?
Now, the beauty is like, I spent those early years establishing my role as a CLI operator.
Okay.
Focused. It's interesting. Like, even though I'm a cardiologist, cardiology represents probably only about 20% of what I do. And most of what I do is in the arterial and venous space too. I mean, large bore, small bore, everything. And I really kind of focused a lot in terms of my research interests and the device development interests in the thrombectomy world. So all things thrombus and removing thrombus, that's really been a focus of mine. And in that regard too, is interesting when there was a young guy named Nick Masre who worked at Cordis and left and told me one day early on, about it was 15, 16 years ago, that he was going to leave and go to this little tiny company called Penumbra.
Yeah.
And as a neuroclinical, I thought he was high because he'd gone up like this meteoric rise from being like a lowly rep to in charge of the entire Eastern Seaboard at Cordis. And he says, I'm leaving. And I'm like, you're crazy. What are you doing? And this is, I think, 2014 now. And this is around the time that Jim Beninati had taken a stroke catheter and decided, hey, can we do this in the vascular bed too? And that was the early phase, Cat 3, Cat 5 days of Indigo. And that's when I came in and started working with the company too. So I was one of the first cardiologists to work with Penumbra on development of all of their thrombectomy catheters to where we are today. And that's also another one of my long-standing relationships as well too. And really that early experience with Penumbra opened up to every other thrombectomy catheter that's out on the market too. I mean, I started working with Inari. I started working with so many other companies as well too, Boston Scientific and whatnot too, with regards to development of devices to deal with all manner of thrombus in all vascular beds. And that's been super exciting, and it's a huge passion of mine too.
So, Jay, what's your take on the thought that as you decide where you invest your time, because I think one thing that we all three recognize very intimately is time is invaluable. There's so many hours in a day and so many days in a week, and you also want to also have time to do whatever it is that you do when you're alone or with your family or so on and so forth. And so I feel that, or there is a sense, I would say, I feel this personally, but I believe that a lot of people also think about it, that all of this work with mainstream industry is important and it's valuable, and it's certainly an important cornerstone of your network. You know, your net worth is as strong as your network, right? In many ways. But the return on investment from a purely wealth building possibility is incredibly limited, right? You have, again, unless you have a very unique and special relationship with a company, chances are they do a fair market analysis and they stipulate a dollar amount to your hour, and then you're an employee, right? You get a W-9 and you're there racking some hours, and
that's a really like, and I think people get this when the outsiders look in and they go to they look at the Sunshine Act and whatnot too, and they go to openpayments.org and whatnot too, or gov. You know, they're like, oh, you know, he's working with all these companies. I was like, if you work with all these companies, it shows that you're a technical expert and you're offering things of value to industry, and I think shows your expertise. But the reality is that you don't make money doing that.
No.
I would make a lot more money not going to meetings and staying home and just doing cases. I lose money by coming to meetings and consulting and doing all these things. I don't do it for money. I do it because I find it interesting.
That's precisely, what I was trying to make a point of is that you're penny counting, these hours. And so when you think about your bandwidth, and you open a whole other kind of worms, which is the attempt to give a bad reputation to somebody that has industry relationships, for me, is just dumb as fuck, because it just means you're a subject matter expert. You're coming to you because you're the best, because you're going to help them get to the next level. Trust me, I don't care about $500, right?
No, exactly.
I can triple, quadruple, or quintuple that by other means in my intellectual powerhouse that are not that. If I'm doing that, is because I think I'm helping other people. So that's another kind of worms. But I guess what I was trying to guide my question to is, in the platform of established industry consulting work and your own company's potential, that's where I think the money is, right? You want to sunshine me for something, is sunshine me somehow for my startup little company, because guess what? That could be a 500x return on my investment. And so I have a hard time at this phase of my career in being distracted by the mainstream consulting, because I feel that if I'm going to use 1 hour of my week in a project, I want it to be on my own damn company, or at least a company where I've been appropriately recognized. A company that comes and says, here's a cap table. Miguel, you're going to get 10, not the 0.0001% they would give me like 10 years ago. But Miguel, here's a chunk of this company for you to actually get involved. So that's to the point that you can move the needle. So what's your thought here? That's where I'm at this junction where I'm like, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's dumb.
No, and it's everyone goes through this growth process. So having now done this for quite a while, like when I first started, it was fine to get those consulting dollars. I was excited that people were interested to hear what I had to say.
Correct.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that, like you get experience, you get to interact with. But I was literally asked this question yesterday by a young vascular surgeon who wanted to know, like, well, how do I get to the next level, and what is the next level? So, and there's no hard and fast rule on this, but like, you start with the consulting, but then the next level is like, well, I don't really want to just get paid for my time. I want to have some skin in the game. And so then maybe a startup can't, really afford to kind of pay everybody a ton of money. They're like, hey, we're going to pay you a little bit of equity. Okay. So equity is nice. And there's different kinds of equity out there, but equity in the beginning is okay because there's a little bit of risk and then maybe potential for reward. But the reality is the vast majority of companies that are out there, they die on the vine. And so some of your equity may be worth nothing or even less than nothing.
Been there, done that.
So that's you take that with a certain amount of risk. Now, the next level beyond that is equity plus consulting fees. So at least you're getting paid for your time and you have equity as well too. And that's probably a nice balance because that kind of de-risks it a little bit too. And it's not like you didn't lose anything. Then there's things like, if you're really you get more involved too. You get preferred type stock or essentially equity, where essentially you get paid out before a lot of these other folks too that come in later on. Because the problem is a big VC comes into and devalues everybody. Then that's when your equity becomes.
Let's talk about that. How does that happen? How do you fall into that trap where you put in a time and work, and then a VC comes in, puts money in, devalues you, and then how do you protect yourself?
Well, I guess it really depends on what kind of relationship do you have with the company, and that's also the reason why at this point of the game, I only work with people I trust. I have a personal relationship with a lot of the companies that that I invest with or I'm involved with, because I'm an activist. If I'm involved with your company, I'm going to make sure that you succeed. I start from the beginning to the end, whatever that end may be, whether or not you IPO or whether or not you exit with a large strategic. And that's very important because that's essentially what I offer for you. I'm going to be in it. Okay. I'm not going to be kind of this guy that's hanging around in the background and just wants to get paid. No, I want you to succeed. And so hopefully what you're going to give me is going to be worth that as well. And then, if you have a series of successes, you can show that. I think that's when you're going to potentially get more offers like that. And the folks that aren't willing to play ball, that's okay. You don't snow skin off your back. You go off and do it elsewhere. But what happens is if a company, you see them burning through cash, okay, they're wasting money on things that they shouldn't be spending money on. And they're going to have to do another raise. You know what's going to happen? You're going to end up getting devalued. So it comes down to having the ability to have those conversations with the folks in charge and saying, hey, how, we want to be good stewards of investor money. And we don't want to just blow through cash. And there's a company, I'm not going to name the company, that is constantly raising money. And that cap table is the most insane cap table I think I've ever seen, because literally everybody on the planet it's like crowdfunded. Well, guess what's going to happen? Yeah, I think the company will sell, but I think everyone's going to get 1x on their investment, which is that they're just going to get their money back.
Their money back.
Okay. If you're lucky.
But is there anything in the type of agreement where you would put yourself in a disadvantageous position?
There are ways to do that, but by and large, it is very difficult to be able to give yourself an advantageous agreement unless you are a founder, unless you are in that inner circle.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate goal, right? So when you eventually, either you start your own company as a founder, I'm not interested really being a CMO. CMO is a largely figurehead position. It's a medical affairs position. Yeah. You have very little power to change the course or trajectory of a company. Rather, you want to be a founder. You want to be somebody who's in that inner circle, somebody who, there are plenty of physicians out there that are founders, and ultimately the reward potentially is a lot higher for that position as well. And you want to have ability to ultimately change the course of that company, and it's have control over its destiny. It's, there are obviously factors that come into play for the outside effects and whatnot too. There's a lot of things right now, turmoil with the economic climate and also regulatory climate, whatnot too. But, you're in it. Right. But as a largely figurehead position, you have no power. And there's a lot of folks who are like, hey, I'm going to go be CMO of this company, especially large companies. You have very little say in being able to do anything of meaning.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
No. And I'll echo your thoughts, and I'll just say, again, without mentioning names, but I've been burned by situations where I thought I was in a very strong position with the leadership of the company, and I put blood and sweat to make it work, all to realize that when push came to shove and there was this necessity to, bring in more funds, last minute funds, these Hail Mary funds, come at a high cost,
Exactly.
right? These VC deals, and I wouldn't say necessarily that they're, because I don't think it doesn't resemble bad on somebody that ultimately, of a group of people that ultimately need that. But the problem is that just very few people in that deal got protected.
Exactly.
And I'm going back 20 years in without being specific. And so even though I really thought I was at a table with people that were caring for me, it was a lot of smoke and mirrors. It wasn't.
So what did your contract say that
That's
did it?
the thing is, like, listen, you may be really good with a lawyer and try to contract yourself up, but at the end of the day, it has to do with the board.
Yeah.
And it has to do with the CEO.
So
Because
what
they can
position
go
do you-
behind.
Yeah, but what position do you want? So say you are approached by two engineers and
Certain
in
legal
marketing.
conditions that you have to put in the
What would you
use
say now?
preferred stock.
What would
class.
what would you say now to say, okay, Miguel, I really, really want you to be part of this project. You are the key to this project. You're gonna tell me, yes, I love it, but these are my conditions. What are those conditions?
Yes, again, front load it as much as you can from a legal standpoint.
Mm.
But here's what I'm going to tell you
Mhm.
is I don't care how much they come at me.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have a way to vet you as a CEO, as a founder, and as a group of people that collectively I can trust you, I don't think that I'm going to put myself ever in a position to give sweat and blood to an entity that ultimately is not going to care for me at the end of the day. That's what I'm going to, which is exactly, I think, what Jay's saying, which is, at this point, the white hair comes at a cost, yes, but it also brings a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
And he knows right now who he could blindly, but without caring about, because honestly, what's a contract if not something to be broken, right? So it doesn't matter how much you lawyer up, are the people at the table people that are no assholes?
But
Are
do
the
you want to
people
be
at the
part of the
table
board? Is that
Well, that's a long-term goal, right? So ultimately, you being part of a board of a company, that takes a lot of experience
Mhm.
and also repute. You have to really have a whole series of successes. Ideally, you'd also own your own company and exit. And at that point, you get invited to be on the boards of various companies because they want your expertise to really guide the success of a company. So you just can't be a random person to end up on a board. You have to really.
But at your level, that is what you're striving for when you have a new project.
Yeah, I mean, and what does a board position offer you? Well, board positions comes with a stake as well too, or sometimes there's a fee or money that you get paid. A lot of people, you see that the board is full of ex CEOs or former high level execs at various companies. And they do a bunch of board positions for various companies. You get invited to do this, and I'm not saying that that's the ultimate thing. It's a great retirement position for me. I want to keep doing the entrepreneurial thing. I mean, I want to keep creating companies, creating technologies, and exploring exciting new spaces. I mean, the board stuff, maybe you could do some board things here and there too, but that to me is not the end goal. I mean, for me, it's just creation. Because I don't want to get bored.
Yeah. So you are creating your own projects.
Yeah. My ultimate long-term goal for me, because I'm not quite there, mostly from a time perspective, and I think and we can touch on this in a second in terms of why that is. But my ultimate goal is to be a founder, and I have, I at some point I'm going to just do my own thing, and we're creating. We got the team, we got all the people in play, and so it's just a matter of like, what is that space? What is that problem that we want to go after? And I think once you get that aha moment, that and if it's got enough legs, well, that's when you can, do.
When you say you have the team, is it connections that are it's your Rolodex, I guess, in a way? It's the people that you've worked with that you know they can do what you need them to do?
Exactly.
Or are they physically into an entity that you've built, i.e. an incubator of sort?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, we have there are folks that I've worked with at multiple companies, and they know what I do. I know what they can do. One of the biggest things, and this is a challenge for a lot of physicians who found companies, is to recognize what they don't know. Physician CEOs are challenging. There are some that have done it very successfully, but what I know about myself is that I should never be the CEO of a company. I'm fine with being a founder. I'm fine with being a CMO in name only, really. But I should not be responsible for the organizational structure and operations management of a company. Why?
Yeah.
Because that is not my area of expertise. Just like I shouldn't be a CFO. You hire a CFO. You hire somebody who's smart, who understands the money, and also ultimately who knows how to work with VCs and also banks and things like that too. If you ever want to IPO, there's a whole process behind that. You hire people. Like I've always found finance was a weak area for me. I was interested in potentially getting more knowledge on that, but it's not necessary. I mean, I know enough to be dangerous, but there are people that are really smart who that's all they do, and they come in, they come from Wall Street, and don't try to do things that you're not strong at. Okay, so when it comes to running a company, there are folks, there are CEOs out there that are dispassionate, that will do the right thing, that will allow that company to be successful. When you're a little too close to it, as a founder, physician, I love a project, but you need to know when to let go because somebody else can honestly do it better than you.
So let's build the Notions 11. You have a project today. You have an idea. Who are the 3, 4, 5, or 7 people that you need? And I'm not talking specific names. I'm just saying, like, I'm going to need an engineer for this. I'm going to need a this for this. Like, build me a team of what you would do today had you the perfect idea.
You need a CEO, okay? Somebody who's going to help run the company. You need somebody who's going to be in charge of operations, but also even kind of essentially the guy. There's lots of different names for these, but like chief sales officer, a VP of sales. Somebody's going to really build the team out. Who's going to get the product sold? You're going to have a head of engineering as well to your R&D. Somebody who's like has the know-how, knows who to get involved to build the development, and also ultimately when it comes to manufacturing, get those manufacturing partners. So I think those are some of the basic fundamentals. Then you're going to need also a CFO as well, to the money manager, somebody who can kind of keep you guys on track. So I think that's a very basic company. There are other roles that need to be built out from there as well too, especially as you grow. But when you start small, you can have a team of 3 or 4 people. There are plenty of little companies out there too that will essentially have a rent a CEO option.
Yeah.
There's ways to like essentially kind of join it as an incubator, and then they kind of give you some of that management stuff too. There's pros and cons to it, but it's a way to potentially do some small startups and get some quick exits, which honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to have a 500 or $800 million exit or $1 billion exit. Sometimes even a $30-40 million exit, and doing a bunch of those can be really quite beneficial as you start to build that experience and portfolio to kind of get to the next level.
Does everybody in the team at that stage need an equity play?
Usually at this early startup side of things too, that's how people get compensated. They have an equity play with a less small salary, and it's you have skin in the game. You believe in the company. You're doing this partly because you're hoping that this thing really kind of hits it big. But everyone gets paid because they got to survive, right? You can't survive off of loans and whatnot too. But I mean, it's certain people will take less, some people take more. I mean, it just depends on how that gets negotiated out. But that's something that your board can figure out with you, and you're going to need a board ultimately as well. This is some fiduciary responsibility, especially the investors. You have to have some outside folks that are making sure that you're not doing crazy things. They frown upon mismanagement financially.
Do you like to invest a little in a lot of places, or are you more, I want to invest more on very scrutinized, strategic, invest in my own projects?
Are you talking time or money?
Money.
Yeah,
I'm talking about money.
my own personal money. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. I was kind of alluding to this. So when you talk about, I've spent so much time and I've been so fixated on all these things that I did the first go around kind of screw it up, at least on a personal level, and ended up getting divorced as a result. And it's because I was married. My mistress was work, and it was just I spent so much time just focused on just building it out, and I kind of let, I think, the some of the social side of it lapse. But now, like, essentially, I'm with a new partner. She's awesome. She understands what I do, and I think that's really important to have the home base kind of secured in order to be able to kind of get to these next levels, especially since this requires so much time and money. But essentially, I was worth a lot of money. then I went to zero after
Okay.
I got divorced. I got wiped out on my divorce. And then
Happens.
it happens. I mean, but you know what? Like for me, it's interesting. My quality of life improved. I learned to live with very little, and I'm a super frugal guy. And every time I travel is for something related to some work, and so I try to like minimize my expenses. But every cent that I have is invested in something. And my project, my goal for myself is to kind of rebuild what I had before too, and then some, right? And so from my standpoint, I've got a portfolio of stuff that I'm involved with that's fairly diversified, with small strategic plays. But then I'll have larger sums of money in those deals where I feel very strongly that this is going to exit. Yeah, and then it's not just that. Um, I have larger money put in areas where I think the exit's going to be within 2 to 3 years, which I think is a fairly reasonable time frame to get a good exit. Because the problem is, if you have money locked up for many years, well, yeah, maybe the multiple will be good, but there's a good chance that the multiple's not going to be that great. And so then you're essentially tying up too much money in an area where you're not going to have that much growth. So you're better off, doing quick plays with a larger sum of money where especially if you have some hand in making sure that this exits, rather than just kind of having it tied up for who knows how long. And
This is a whole another episode.
yeah.
This is an entire episode. Literally, this is an entire episode. So, question. So, what is, and obviously this,
Well, by the way, let me just tease for the audience.
yeah,
We have now decided formally
Right.
that we are today, 1 second ago, that we're going to build the Entrepreneur Masterclass series where we're going to fly in the top 10 badass motherfuckers that do this the right way,
yeah,
that have had success.
Yeah.
And we're going to have in a closed Airbnb in an undisclosed location, maybe Costa Rica. I'm not going to go into detail, but we're going to have a pretty cool thing. And by the way, just FYI, you're on this.
yeah, you're
short
vulnerable.
list.
But let me tell you something. I don't know anything. Okay. And that's
Seems
what
like you know more than I
no,
do.
but that's the thing though. I'm learning so much from just interacting with these CEOs and folks and whatnot too. They're, that's the key is you got a mentorship, right? You have to have people that you can talk to. And sometimes it's invaluable just to listen to what they do and how they do it. And there's different approaches to this. So, I'm talk to me in 2-3 years, my whole perspective on this can be completely different just from the experiences that we've been through in terms of like the trials and tribulations and the failures, things that didn't work. And then, who knows? Success is really built upon all your failures.
Well, there was a famous prophet, and I'm not going to name drop because I have no idea, but my dad would used to say that to me all the time. He says, Miguel, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know shit.
I don't know shit.
That's it. So the more you eat knowledge, you realize, man, whatever I had in the tank to begin with was nothing, because you open the door and there's just all this other knowledge out there. And for knowledge seeking people like ourselves, what's made all of this even more clear is AI. Like now I've got ChatGPT essentially giving me lectures on shit that I thought I had a grasp on. And now I'll on the drive home, I've got a 20-minute commute. I'll just be like, hey man, go crazy. Give me 15 minutes on, I don't know, investments, on management of contracts, on renegotiating a bank loan, on all these other things that are, are absolutely not part of our, build up, but you realize that that's there. And so you need that camaraderie, that network, that trust to be built in order to find the right path. Let me ask you something, Jay. If you're an allocator of capital, as yourself, and you come across a new company that's potentially at a seed round early on, what's more important, the founder or the technology?
It's interesting. Even the crappiest technology gets sold. I mean, there's so many things out there too. I was like, this is stupid. But guess what? They get it sold and they make a lot of money. And so the reality is it's the team that matters more than the technology itself. Now, I hope you can do a little bit of both. Like, I hope if I get involved with that I can make the technology better. That's my job. I'm a technology guy. I can fix a lot of things. And I really feel confident about that. But the most important thing is who's in charge, and are they a successful entrepreneur? Can they do this again and again and again? And so sometimes I've even met CEOs where I'm like, it's kind of an odd guy, but you know what? They have a 7, 8 exits, and you know what?
That's
That
the-
person gets it done, no matter how they are, personality-wise. Ideally, they're a good human being and also a good entrepreneur. That's the best combination, in my opinion. And those are the folks I really like to work with. But I've also worked with not so great people, but still they get it done. And at the end of the day, my job is to help them make the technology better. So I will still get involved with stuff where it's not the most exciting thing. However, there's got to be a story there, right? There's got to be a way for me to see a commercial applicability to this technology, because it's not just how good the technology is, but are people going to use it? Is there going to be growth potential here too? If you look at exits nowadays too, for a lot of these companies, people are looking to get these things de-risked. So a lot of the strategics want to see a certain amount of sales just kind of happening now. It's not just that you're going to buy it based off of animal data or even early first in human stuff. We want to actually see people actually using it, because the climate has changed. It's not the way it was in the past.
And it brings me to a point that I think I brought up with other guests. I forget who it was that I asked this, but I see more and more of this. Actually, I think it was Tim Blair that we talked about.
Yeah, Tim's a great guy.
Yeah, awesome guy.
Yeah.
Master class also.
Mhm.
Master class type of guy. But he mentioned, a lot of these entities are now wanting to essentially remove all risk, have a sales team to some point, right? Show that there's already traction and that I'm going to buy this.
That's what
It's almost, if you think about it, it's almost like, let me share this story with a that I had, because it's almost like private equity thing, right? And I'll share this story. You all know, right? 3 years ago, everything went to shit. You got divorced. I ended up in the streets, no job. So 6-figure zero. And I have to rebuild the whole thing and from scratch. And I want to say about 6 months into it, I was with debt out of my ears. The company was not necessarily generating what I thought it would. I had all these deliriums of grandeur. There was going to have patients coming out Miguel Montero Baker may be somebody in a small niche, but nobody fucking knows who I am in Victoria, Texas, or El Campo, Texas, or Cuero, Texas. So I had to do some grassroots. And anyway, long story short, we're in a better place now. But there was a time where I was in really a lot of pain, a lot of stress, a lot of pressure was on my back. And the bank had put me on a high risk thing, which means that they cut your oxygen. They make it impossible to bank. They just want you out. For some reason, I ticked whatever box it was, and they're like, okay, we don't need you anymore. You're going to have to find a bank, or you're going to have to pay our loan in a month, which means it's essentially they want you to fold or find another bank. Later, I found out that they were closing their entire medical book. So it wasn't really my company. It was just I felt into some dumb administrative group, and they said, hey, we got to move these, 500 accounts out. Done overnight, signature, end of story. So I remember having a conversation with this private equity person, and I came to him and I'm like, look, dude, I know what I can bring to you. You have outpatient labs. I'm selling you my outpatient lab, and I'm going to make it at a discount. Like you can buy me for peanuts, but get me out of this hassle. And the guy looked at me square in the eyes and he said, I love you, man, but I can't. Like I'm in private equity, which means that I only buy profitable businesses. I don't care about the story's sad and I hope that it goes well, but you have to go and fucking figure it out on your own and then come back. And said, so give me a second, man. You're telling me that you're not willing to buy me today for $1.5 million. I'm giving you like equity, whatever. And then he stopped me and he said, but I'll buy you for 30 million when the time is right. And I had this kind of pause and I understood. And he said, we don't make bets that are not winning bets. That's the difference in venture capitalism and private equity. So what I feel is happening with a lot of these companies is they're almost becoming, there's a removal from the VC. VCs are almost removing themselves from what VCs were. And now you only have the angel investors making small bets on people all over the place. That's different. That's a very different incipient group that's becoming smaller. VCs are becoming more PEs because they want these bets to be perfect. So they come in at the last minute when your company's about to fold and you need $50 million, $100 million, $300 million to sell $1 billion company. and they'll give it to you, and that's why you get raped in the last minute. But they want all the risk averse. So that was a long-winded story. Sorry, but I want to get to the point, which the point of this question is, I see this more and more where physicians are crowdfunding companies.
I see that.
And you have to have, because now the amount of people asking for money now is 10 times what the amount of people 10 years ago would ask for money.
Yeah.
So what happened? Why are now companies coming to me as an operator to ask for my money? And here's my explanation. And I want to hear what yours is, because this for me is, guys out there, be very careful.
Mm-hmm.
Be very careful of where you put your money, because yes, they're asking for 50, 100, 150, and they know that you have it in your 401k. And if you have a self-directed 401k, you can tap into that tomorrow. Whatever's sitting there, whatever money you have there, it doesn't have to be in the S&P 500. You move it into a self-directed IRA and you send them a check today. So you can invest. It's not even out of your own account. It could be pre-tax, whatever that is. But the thing is, now the risk is starting to fall on us, and we are not realizing that. That's what I think I want to make a point about, which is now this crowdfunding shit with doctors, not that it's wrong, because how nice would it be that I could get into a 100x entity, into a 100x, 10x, 50x.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. If I could,
But it's not going to happen.
if I can pull 500,000 back into my bank account for my retirement, that sounds like a beautiful thing. But the thing is, I don't think it's going to happen.
No, it's not.
And so,
Well,
what do you think is,
probabilities, right? Because you have to put money into, I don't know absolutely anything about this, but from the little that I've had ChatGPT is that you have to distribute your bets, right? But every bet is 50K. So say you have 30 bets, you do the math. It's a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to me, saying that I put money on one.
in my vast experience of one bet,
But it doesn't seem like that you have great odds. It seems like a lot of betting.
So anyway, I want to bring that back to Jay, because I want his perspective on this. How do you think this crowdsourcing with physicians as being the entities that are fulfilling the raises, what does that mean for the physicians? Is that the right move? And what do you think about it moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, not to disparage any of the companies that do this, and I get why they do it, because it's a different funding source, and sometimes it's a way to get some ready capital without a lot of risk for them. Because when you take the other kinds of money, it comes with a lot of conditions. It's expensive, right? You can either go to a bank and get a whole bunch of debt for a certain amount of interest rate, or you go out and take this other money and that comes at a high tax or high cost, impacting the other investors, and everyone gets pissed off. But the reality is, when you crowdfund, one issue I see is that you have all these physicians and everybody is conflicted, right? So now when it comes to like, hey, we've got to do a trial, we've got to go talk about these technologies and get things moved. If everyone was conflicted financially, then it's not a great look. So there's the perception side of it. And then the second part too is like that, I just think that it's just not something, and maybe it's just because it's not been done really before. There's always been, at least from I think on the industry side of things, taking primarily physician-only money is just not a standard practice, right? It's not something we've done. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I mean, it's just the idea of like doing a Kickstarter for a startup and expecting you to get the money through fractional ownership. Because what happens when they have to do another raise? And there's one company I'm thinking about just is constantly doing raises. And they're just devaluing everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And there's always a steady pool of physicians out there too, with some loose capital lying around too. And again, like, some of these people can't afford to do this, but they're like, it's like Vegas. You got the allure of the big exit. And when we know that most of these companies will fail or will not, because at the very least, if you want to have a successful exit, you'd like to get about 3x return on what you invested. And if you're not going to get that, if you're going to get 1x, you just get your money back.
Yeah.
It's not great, because you would have done better just putting it in index funds, and you would have, had more money.
So that's the
Maybe I would
thing.
put it in
Is
Ethereum. I love poking this.
how many times did I tell you?
Look, he gets riled up every single time.
Listen, I'm just gonna say, we were in my office not too long ago. I said, put $5,000 in Ethereum. Today,
How much would I have made?
the value of Ethereum, my dear friend, is at its peak highest at let me see. Yep, about $5,000. So
But
you would have made 20% on that one
Yeah.
when I told you to do it.
but if you put 5,000 in Bitcoin a few years ago, like now you own a country.
Yes. There's a good story to be told, right? I mean, I think for a company to say, I have 100 cardiologists that invested in my company, that is how much they believe this technology is good. That's a good story. I think that sounds really good. I just don't know that I don't know that it's been very clear. And again, I mean, maybe I'm just being psychotic here, but I just feel that this is now a way of doing business and trying to de-risk and getting all this free capital at very little risk, but at the expense of because of the ignorance of the investor.
Yeah.
And I feel that doctors are not very smart investing people, but they're part of the 1% of people that pull a lot of money, and it's constant, and they have jobs that pay really well, and they make, 5 and 7 and 800,000. So of course, in the greater scheme of things, 50 or 100K doesn't sound that bad every other year. I can probably do that. But I just don't know that this is sustainable and that they're going to be happy. I fear that these doctors are just going to be very displeased.
I think it works at a lower buy-in. At a lower buy-in, then you can spread it. Then you have to see, I don't know.
So even more crowdsourcing. So you want to go down to 10K?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to do 30, 50K bets, right? I can't do that.
No, I mean, yeah, of course not. No. It's not. But I just don't know.
But if that's the case, you probably shouldn't be doing this kind of investing.
Yeah, exactly.
True. I think if you can't afford that level of risk, you shouldn't. This should not be your game.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to understand that if you're going to put a $50,000 or $100,000 bet, because that's usually the standard ask.
Yeah.
From a doc, and you can't expect to lose that and walk away is no big deal. You should not be investing in this.
Yeah. But I mean,
open a Robinhood account and put $5,000 every other.
I agree.
Don't invest in NVIDIA.
Yeah. Buy some stock in Apple or Tesla.
The math has to be something around 10 of those bets to get one at best, right?
Yeah, it's about 7. And if you look even from the VC world as well too, they invested, they spread the money around, right? Their job is to move money, right? So they invest in a lot of things where only one will hit, but a lot of the other ones end up, going belly up. That's the hope.
So if you do 10, that's 500.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're saying that a decent excess is 3x. So then if you get one of those, then it's 150 that you get back.
Well, I think it's wiping people capacity to actually monetize. They're not realizing that they're just being taken as a flock, a group of people to get to the next stage.
Which is why I don't do that.
And
I only invest in companies that I have a direct hand guiding. And if I can't help, if the company fails and I was involved with it too, and I was right there, and despite our best efforts, it didn't succeed, that's okay. Because I know that I did my best, we tried, and things happened and didn't work out. Or if it was highly successful, then I can say, hey, I helped make that happen. That's great. If I'm just blindly giving money and I have no control whatsoever on the direction or how that money gets used, there was one company that told me that they've allocated X amount of the physician dollars to just litigation. I was like, I don't want my money being used to pay for a bunch of lawyers to protect your IP or whatever it is. I mean, you need to do that. That's part of it. But don't tell me that that's what that money is being used for. Yeah. Tell me that it's being used to help, get this product to market, but that's the reality. I mean, they already know that they're going to be sued. So they've already allocated X amount of dollars as a preemptive measure to protect themselves. And that's not a strong vote of confidence. It's just me, but it's just, again, a lot of people, not to begrudge these companies. I mean, it's a tough market. Money is not as easy to come by as it once was.
Yeah.
And maybe that's going to change again too in the future. But right now, this is the reality of today. So I'm not going to begrudge these other alternative money models. All I can say is for myself, unless I have a direct hand in saying where my money goes, I can't do it.
Man, I mean, I've got very, very good friends who I respect a lot who are behind these companies. I've made bets myself in these companies.
I've made a bet.
I've just, the more I think about it, the less I'm inclined to do this again. I don't think that I should be crowdsourcing a company.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna only do this when I am going to be in a position to add value to the company with my experience, with my intellect. There's a reason why now we have an early feasibility company in Costa Rica that we're doing first in human studies. We started this almost 10 years ago. We've done project after project after project, both in Mexico and Costa Rica. That's the value I can bring to the table, right?
Yeah.
When Jay comes to me and says, Miguel, I've got this one. What about first in human? I say, okay, well, here's the regulatory hurdles, but we could get this done. And it's going to mimic the FDA. It's going to accelerate you to this other level. That's what I bring to the table. And for that, I'm going to put a bet. When I see it and I feel this is a good one, I can bet.
Yeah.
Because it's a more safe bet and it's a more mature.
You're de-risking. And that's the thing,
Exactly.
right? So you're de-risking the investment.
Anyway, look, man, it's been an hour. It went like that. I'm glad that you were able to carve a little time. I know you're busy at AMP and busy in all of your other stuff, of course.
I love being
But
busy.
but we'll get you back, and then be mindful. We're gonna do this masterclass thing.
No, I love it. Yeah, it sounds like an awesome thing.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for being here.
So much.
Thanks so much, Jay.
Bye.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.